everyone, to the first episode of Success Comes in Threes, where I speak to highly successful individuals who have dedicated themselves to their business, personal, and spiritual self. I'm your host, Sam Campolo, and my goal is to leave you with one tad bit today. Today, I have TJ. TJ Meagher is a philosopher, life mentor, an incredible person, and especially a go-getter. TJ, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
A wonderful introduction, man. Really happy to be here. Happy for your first podcast.
Yeah. This has been a goal of mine for a very long time, and I'm happy for you to be the first one on. I think it's gonna be great. So, tell me a little bit about yourself for our viewers to just get acquainted with you.
Sure. So, I'm a life coach, and mostly what I focus on is people that are struggling with common things like overthinking, procrastination, perfectionism, and they're all high achievers. I'm not focusing on people that are struggling to get out of bed. I'm focusing on people that are achieving a lot, but they're just procrastinating. They're not focused on what they really have to do, and I'm helping them to break out of these cycles that they can't see in themselves, these blind spots that are having them repeat things. I'm helping them to break out of it, and not by advice. I don't like advice, but rather by deep questioning that has them shift their own perspective. Yeah. And then the empowerment of learning how to shift your own perspective, that leads to them shifting their own behaviors and being comfortable enough with failure to be able to experiment outside their known realm.
So how do you find those people that aren't that are on that level that you're looking for? You're not looking for the person that's sleeping in or doing all that type of stuff like you were saying in the beginning. How do you find those kinds of people? Or do you think they're just attracted to you from your content? Or have you ever had to turn down some clients?
For sure. Yeah, there was a couple of clients that I knew that just weren't in for it. They weren't about what I wanted. What I want my coaching to be is an opportunity for people to expand their possibilities, not just bullshit or talk about their problems, but actually expand into who they could be, right?
Wow.
And so I have turned down some clients that just weren't about it. They just thought it was a therapy session. But how do I find them? It's exactly what you're doing here, just simply by being authentic, putting up my content that really resonates in my heart, with my struggles, with the people that I see that I care about and their struggles, and the clients and how I'm helping them. That, for me, is bleeding into the content I create, and just by simply letting it organically spill out from the real discoveries that we have in our sessions and from my own experience, it's just going to naturally bring in people that are aligned with that.
Wow. So it's almost like they're just getting attracted to you. It's just coming to you. Now, I know you're huge on Instagram, and especially the overthinker is your big thing, which I've seen that 100 times, but it's good. Yeah. It's good stuff. So why do you focus a lot of your social media on the overthinker comparative to all the other problems that, come in day-to-day life, anxiety, stress, all the other factors?
It's the starting point. It's, that niche is it's a marketing piece, and you got to meet people where they are. You can't tell them about a problem that they don't know that they have. But everyone knows and feels the guilt of procrastination. Everyone feels the anxiety of when their mind is racing. Right. And so I'm just putting a name on the experience they're having. And it doesn't mean that all my coaching is just around procrastination and overthinking and perfectionism. That's the thing that makes them aware that they are in pain, right? And say, oh, wait a minute, damn, yeah, this is really bothering me. And if the coaching stopped there, it's like, what are we really doing? We're going towards the subconscious and the underlying beliefs and mechanisms that are making that behavior a result. So, but I can't say to them the underlying things that they're not even aware that are going on in them.
Well, I love you brought up the subconscious. I did psychology back in college, so I loved learning about that stuff. Actually, I was a bio major, and I did that for about a year, and I just kind of found out that biology just wasn't for me. So then I went into psychology and absolutely loved it. So with psychology, I mean, it's great. It's something that I love and share with you, which is why we have a lot of synergy. So with subconscious mind, how do you tap into someone's subconscious mind when you're coaching them, and how do you portray it to them so that it doesn't not like hurt them, but do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts of that question, right? There's one which is how do we tap into the subconscious, and the other part of that question is how do we do it in a way that is not going to hurt them or not going to punch their ego too bad.
Yeah, that's probably one of your biggest issues is having someone punch your ego.
Right. Well, here's the thing: is that I only take on clients that are willing to be punched.
Right. Right. Well, that's the biggest thing. I mean, the biggest thing is to face adversity. So when you're actually facing a challenge and something that's hard, which trying to let go of your ego is probably one of the hardest things to do in life, in my opinion, and trying to become self-actualized, which again is just a goal that is very hard to achieve. But no, it's very, I don't know, it's very interesting to me. I don't know.
Want me to answer that question?
Yeah.
So to me, there's many ways to get inside the subconscious. And it all initially starts with presence and presence on my end. So what I'm paying attention to is what they're not saying. Okay. I'm paying attention to the tone, to the ways that they may evade my question, the ways in which when they speak, I listen for the larger themes and maybe even some mythological, kind of archetypal experiences. And I kind of extract and go to the heart of what they're actually saying.
How do you dial into someone's subconscious without fully hurting their ego?
Right. So I think one of the ways is that you have to first establish trust. And I think trust is something that comes when you realize that the person next to you, the person in front of you, wants your best interest, has your best interest in mind. So that's something that I establish with my clients from the start, is that I'm going to not hold any of my punches back. And it doesn't mean that I'm trying to hurt you. It's that I'm the only person in your life who's honest enough to be able to tell you exactly what I see. And it's not that I'm right or wrong. It's that I'm going to use my intuition and tell you exactly what I see. And I think having that safe space, that container where they know they're not being judged, that is the prerequisite for not being hurt when we go into the subconscious. Because they have that understanding that I do have their best interest in mind. And that gives me access. The relationship that I have with them is much more important than what happens in the one session.
Would you say that trust is probably the most important thing to have as a human? Like as a person, from person to person relationship, would you say that trust is the most important thing, or is there a different word that you would use for that?
I'd probably say trust. Personally speaking, philosophically speaking, I think without trust, you can't have a stable relationship. So I would say, yeah, trust is the thing, because your self-esteem even is founded on trust, trusting that you're going to be there for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have some trouble with like personally being there for myself, like, putting myself first, which I know I've heard all these big guys, Eric Thomas, Tony Robbins, David Goggins, like they're always like, you got to be there for yourself first and then worry about everyone else. Now I'm having trouble doing that. What advice would you give to someone like me to be able to do that?
Find what makes you put yourself second. First, find that, because you can't build a foundation you can't build a house on top of a shitty foundation. So find whatever.
I know a lot about building houses, in case you guys were wondering.
Love it. Yeah, I mean.
Well, so you can't have a bad foundation in order to build a house, which is, of course, makes sense. So what do you mean by that?
What I mean is that you can't flood yourself with new age kind of affirmation, spirituality. Like, let me just say all these positive things to myself to boost me up, and I'm going to put myself first. But if you're taking all these actions, but in your subconscious mind, you still believe that you don't deserve it, you are going to self-sabotage.
Yep. I know that all too well. Do you have a morning routine? And if you do, what is it? And yeah, let's just start there.
Yeah, I do have a morning routine. I don't always do it every, 100% success. But my morning routine is usually get up, go to the bathroom, have a drink of water, and then go for a run. Short run, 5-10 minutes, just to get my body in the sun, get the sun in my eyes. And when I come back, then I take a cold shower, sit down, meditate, and then from there I look at what I have to do today, and I make a plan of what I have to do. And then sometimes if I'm feeling I've got a little extra time, I'll read a document that I made for myself about the life that I want to live and the gratitude that I have and what life means.
Your goals and your affirmations, basically.
Goals, affirmations, but also just gratitude and restating who I am and my own beliefs.
So let's go into gratitude, because gratitude for me, I mean, I tried that gratitude journal thing. I did it for like probably a week or two, and I was like, listen, this just doesn't even feel like I'm grateful for writing the grateful thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
it goes
like
exactly back to doing the action, but just acting it out and not actually believing it in your subconscious.
Yes. So like I realized like that, like on my way here, I wanted to start a podcast since I was like 15, because I'm awful at writing. My handwriting, writing in general, which I want to get better at. So I know that I'm better with talking and just communicating that way rather than writing a blog post. So I always wanted to do that. And I guess why I'm saying that is because it's just, while I was driving here, I started to realize like, wow, this is really happening. I finally got to this point where I want to make the podcast, and we're here and we're sitting here. So it's just amazing. And that was a grateful moment that I did in my own head. But if I wrote that down on a piece of paper and I was doing that for 365 days a year, I don't think it would have had that same impact than it did at that moment driving in the car.
Why not?
My thing is because it's like it's overdone, it's overdrawn. I especially if it becomes a thing where I'm doing it consistently, which I know doing certain things consistently is great, but for me, the gratitude journal just didn't work out for me. I don't know.
Yeah. So tease out the main point there. What's the lesson in that?
The lesson
about gratitude.
To be in the present moment.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I mean, for me, I'm seeing something that we haven't really exactly said. And I think maybe your point was, and tell me if it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It seems like you're saying if you're overemphasizing gratitude all the time, you end up maybe not being as grateful for something when you are surprised.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Yeah, it's like it almost feels more like a chore than it feels like I'm feeling grateful to be able to write. Like grateful to be able to write on this piece of paper. I'm grateful that I can walk. I'm grateful that there's a sun out today instead of rain. Right? Like those things are all amazing, and it's great to be grateful. But I think I guess the term needs to be better used. Does that make sense? I don't know. How do you feel about it? Maybe I'm the complete opposite way that you feel, and maybe you do grateful journal every day. I don't know. And for those people that do that, if that works for you, that's great.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome. For me, it didn't work out.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, what I really liked is so Martin Seligman, he's like the founder of positive psychology.
Okay.
Had this like 3 blessings journal, and I've practiced that. And what I noticed, the benefit for me was the long term, just like mostly anything. Mm-hmm. After long term committing to that, I started to, in my day, proactively seek opportunities to feel gratitude.
Wow.
So that for me was the real power in that.
So I think the way that you looked at it was different than the way that I looked at it. The way that I was looking at it was, okay, it's just another task in the day that I have to complete before I go start work.
Right.
So you were looking at it as a more of like, okay, how can I use this to benefit my life? And it was the same thing. As I started to realize that a lot of the stuff that I was doing was steps leading up to the next thing or the next thing, reason why I'm saying that is because when I first started my morning routine, it was about, I wanted to go to the gym, meditate, and read. Now, as I started doing that, it was great for like the first 6 months. But then as time started to move on, I started just realizing I was counting the pages, not reading. I was meditating for the 10 minutes, but not really meditating. Right. So this was a certain thing that just shifted my mindset. And this was recently, like four weeks ago, where I've really started to like learn and truly read the 10 pages or 15 pages or whatever it is, and really sit there and meditate and not worry about what's going on in the rest of my day, which I feel like that's an issue that people run into.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We, the things that we try to use as, not even use, the things that we want to step away from our life in order to do these things that will better us, we, again, fall into treating them as check marks in a to-do list. Yeah.
So I saw when I was saying that, you made a little check mark.
Yeah.
So is this something that you deal with a lot of your clients or with some clients that you brought on?
Sure. And that's the thing, is that I consider this toxic productivity. It's this idea that somehow in a slippery manner, the things that you do become important because you're going to feel productive doing them instead of the true value of the thing.
That's great.
Yeah, the value slips from the doing of the actual, the deed or whatever it might be. The value slips into productivity because productivity is attached to your self-worth. So because self-worth is a deeper need than whatever that other achievement is, your brain sees that task as not a route to something deeper, some value that is in the actual task, but simply as a means towards the end of you having high self-worth.
So you were saying trust. Like, what traits do you think are the best thing to have in someone that you've been bringing in, or a new client? What do you think is like the best thing for someone to have?
So let me clarify the question. So you're saying, what are the best traits that make up a client for me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think a willingness to be vulnerable. And it's interesting because I think sometimes our ability to be vulnerable is impinged by our confidence. Yeah, because we want...
Say that again. You're saying
that our vulnerability, our willingness to be vulnerable,
okay,
is impinged by our self-confidence.
Wow.
So we all strive for authenticity. We don't know what that means. Simply, it means, for me, is to be authentic means to have your own thoughts and to live by them, and to be clear about your values, your beliefs, and to actually be that person on the outside. And that's authenticity. And when in our past, we've been vulnerable, we have been authentic, right? Because vulnerability and authenticity are very connected, very deeply connected. When our opportunity to be vulnerable was shut down, we learned to not be authentic, right? And we stopped being courageous enough to reveal ourselves. And I think the whole reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of people that come to me, they have an underlying theme of lack of self-worth, you know?
So you would say most of your clients have this underlying thing of self-worth, like that it's not where it needs to be.
I think everybody does.
Yeah.
In some way, everybody in the world is insecure.
Yeah.
Like in some way or another. And that's an issue with your self-image. It's not something to fix. Overthinkers think it's something to fix. It's not something to fix.
That's me. I think it's something to fix.
Right. That was maybe your way. You being useful for your older brothers, maybe. Being the fixer was maybe the way that you got validated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were asking me, like, what makes a good client? And I think one was that one singular point was this willingness to be vulnerable. Yeah. And that willingness to be vulnerable sometimes impinges on our confidence, our self-worth. So it's this strange paradox that clients have to hold where they're trusting me to not, like their past, hurt them or judge them, right? So that it's a real jump, an act of faith to come and coach with me, because I request that they be their full selves, not holding back their punches. And that requires a level of authenticity that maybe they're not used to, or maybe they just don't have in their life, and they're seeking, they're yearning for that, for someone to witness them exactly as they are in totality.
Well, I feel like there's always that one thing that people tend to hold back, like when they're either in therapy or they're life coaching, whatever it may be, business coaching. There's always like that one thing that they know that they're worried about saying and how it's going to be perceived, which I feel like that's what you're kind of getting at. And that one thing is the difference between, are you going to take this to the next level, or are you just going to leave it at where it was?
Yes, because clients always come to me saying, "Oh, I lack clarity, I'm confused." They're not. They're holding themselves back. It's fear. I mean, when we get past the superficial level of lacking clarity, we usually get to the fact that they do know what they want. They do know what's blocking them. They're just afraid to face it.
Right. So, and you're the one that shines the light on what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably one of the hardest things for people to do, is find that light to shine on what it is. Just like how I don't know what it is. I'm sure if I did a couple sessions with you, which maybe I might after this podcast, right. My God, really dialed in here. Maybe I will. Yeah. But no, that's some great stuff. How would somebody get close to self-worth where they feel confident in themselves, or get to that stage? Because you said there's really no way of like fully getting there, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, there is a way to get there, like kind of conceptually, but on the human level, we are going to, like, it is to be vulnerable, to be insecure is a part of the human nature. Like if we look honestly at the human condition, like we don't know what the hell we're doing. We're going to die. Like we get sick. People deceive us.
There's war.
Yeah. We are so vulnerable. So insecurity is a natural part of being an organism that is so vulnerable to pain and death.
Right.
So it's not something that we can necessarily get rid of, but almost in a Buddhist way, we can stop obsessing about needing to be secure.
Mm. So how do you stop that? How do you stop obsessing the need to be secure? Because I feel like that's a human need. At least people view it that way. Well, and secure, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like secure, like income, house, or like what do you?
And so, yeah, don't get me wrong, you or anyone that's listening, I'm not talking about forget about building a safety net in your life. Of course not. What I'm referring to is this idea that you can control life and feel safe by escaping risk.
The ebbs and flows. You just got to let it flow. I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just letting things just go past you and move through you rather than letting it bundle up. It's like something happens, like for me, like something happens with a deal or it doesn't go through. And then I'll feel that anger or that, sadness for longer than it needs to be there, rather than just letting it happen and letting it move through me. Like it is what it is. Just let it move. It's part of life. Mm. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's a very big part of it. And a lot of it is moving from the personal ego perspective to the human condition perspective of, oh yeah, I can't control the outcome. Oh yeah, this is what it means to be human. I have expectations and they're let down. Let me not have anger and resentment. Let me feel the actual feeling, which is disappointment, which is sadness, and not block that, right? So when we actually earn our own self-trust by being willing to feel the deeper feelings that our secondary emotions are blocking. Now, this can become a cycle when you have continually proven to yourself that you're not willing to look honestly at life. Then you don't trust yourself to to look honestly at life and to do what it is that you say you're going to do.
How did you learn all this? Where did this all come from? Was it books? Was it college? Was it watching shows? Was it listening? Was it podcasts? Like how did you get to this point? Because it's amazing to hear you talk, honestly.
Thanks.
So how did you get here? I know that's a double-barreled, loaded question.
Yeah,
but
a part of me wants to answer this chronologically because I think it's an interesting. I think my life has been pretty, I don't know, for me, interesting. I don't know. But another part of me wants to say that just I've learned the most from my clients, and I'm not saying that I'm saying that because really in the past few years of being a coach, I have been collecting so much. Of understanding from real life experience and seeing the way that people struggle, genuinely, heroically struggle with being human. That has taught me so much. And I think that's a starter, is that's what I learned the most from. But what I think is important to point out is that what led up to that. Yeah. So to be able to, I'll say this, one of my favorite quotes by Yeats, I think he was an Irish poet. So he says, "The world is full of magic, patiently waiting for your senses to sharpen." And I love this. I literally have like goosebumps right now.
So say that again.
The world.
I want to internalize it.
The world is full of magic, patiently waiting for your senses to sharpen.
Wow. Wow. So if you were to unload that quote.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to unload it, and then I'm going to bring this into how I've gotten to where I've gotten in my life, which is a hell of an endeavor. So let's go.
Got to drink some water first before.
Yes, exactly.
Before you do this.
Exactly, right.
Here we go. Gear up, guys. We're going in.
Let's go in. So to unload that, the world is full of magic. What's magic? I think it's a placeholder for the unseen, for
experiences.
Yeah, experiences. For example, in this moment, there is so much potential for what we could say, for what we could experience, even in this moment. There's so much beauty in the fact that I am even here right now talking to a friend on this podcast. There's so many different perspectives we can have on this, and the world, meaning the now, our life, is constantly full of potential for beauty and magic to be there. And it's just patient. It's so gracefully, life is so gracefully waiting for us to sharpen our senses, our intuition, to sharpen our perspective, to be able to pull out, not from the future in some perceived goal, but to pull out of the present everything we need. That's the secret.
Yeah, that's big. So how long, because like that must have taken you a long time to fully unpack that quote, because you got goosebumps from it. So if that's the case, and that was probably something that hit you pretty hard when you fully understood it and fully grasped it. So, I mean, that must have taken you how long to really be able to fully explain that?
The sentiment was immediately in my soul. The explanation came later, but the sentiment resonated deeply.
That's funny because I felt it. When you first said it, I felt it. I didn't know what it was. Like I couldn't unpack it right then and there. But when you said it, I felt it like fully. So that's why I was like, say that again, because I need to hear that again and internalize it.
Right.
So that's probably maybe something like what happened to you.
Right. And let's go into now how this bleeds into how I've gotten to where I am. So the world being full of magic, waiting for our senses to sharpen. For me, waiting for the senses to sharpen, my senses sharpened when I was 18. And it was actually a moment. It was not a gradual progression. It was a moment in which I was thrown into the abyss of nihilism and had to dig my way out.
What is nihilism?
This belief that the universe and life existence has no meaning.
Okay.
So I was up on a hill with my buddy, my best friend, and we were just looking at the stars, and he was pointing out to me that the larger stars are actually not large. They're just closer than those smaller stars. And when I stopped looking at a landscape of the night sky, and I started looking with depth, with 3D, looking into nothingness, I felt as if for the first time I could see myself in a microscopic perspective. And doing that in one shot, in one hook of life, just pulled out the rug. The ground became glass, and I broke and shattered, and my values and beliefs evaporated. And that was the largest existential crisis that I've ever gone through. And I remember literally falling to my knees in panic. At first it was so wondrous that I fell into a panic attack. It was that powerful. I thought that I was going to leave the earth because gravity was going to stop holding me.
Right.
This was an experience that shaped who I am today, really. And that was the sharpening of the senses, because after that, I went through months of rebuilding myself as if I was a baby, learning about the world. Literally, colors were more vibrant for months. Everything changed, and
what an experience.
Yeah, and it was also difficult because nothing changed externally, but yet everything changed, and I felt like I was going crazy for a while, But going through that and finding my values, finding my sense of myself and who I was, and rebuilding that, and learning my values and exploring and being broken again and again and again by life, and being willing to, was the most beautiful experience I have ever had.
It's the journey.
Yeah. And I know you have felt it because you told me that. You can get into that too. I know that. But that willingness to be broken by life forced me to look honestly at what's going on here, to stop looking away from reality. And that was the foundation of the rest of what's become of me and who I am.
Unbelievable. You're going to let that sink in. That was great. Really.
I know you've had a similar experience.
Yeah. First podcast, you might as well let it all out, right?
We're here.
Put it out on the table.
We are here.
So back in college, I had a really, really close friend. He was in my fraternity with me. He was my little in the fraternity. For people that don't know fraternities that are watching or listening, basically your little is like, think of them as like your little brother, like someone who like you get really close to and you just help them along. So, I was considering ourselves two peas in a pod. We would do everything together. We hung out. We would, everything under the sun we were doing together. And I remember distinctively, I was at a scuba diving class that he told me to join with my girlfriend. And she ran in, and then I got a call from my friend, and he's like, "Sam, Nick's dead." I was like, "What?" And I'm getting goosebumps just saying. He's like, "Sam, Nick's dead." I was like, "What do you mean?" Like it just didn't compute, and then it all basically shit hit the fan. I drive down, get there as fast as I possibly can, and we're all just in a room, 60 guys all together in a room, 60 people. That 20 people would show up to a party, 15 people were coming here. All 60 kids in the fraternity were there. And, just the way that he passed, which was unfortunately by suicide, completely shifted my reality. And the way that I think about things. And that's what drove me into where I am now. I was on the path of just doing the 9-to-5 thing, happy hour, all that stuff, and everything, was working out. And then once that hit, it was like depression, anger, not understanding where I am, kind of like that feeling that you were getting. I'm sure you had some of that feeling when you were like, nothing makes sense anymore, which is like, why am I here? So it was almost to the T, kind of like how you were feeling, which is why I said immediately when I met you, we have some sort of synergy, and I don't know what that is. Unfortunately, mine was very, heartbreaking. I think yours was awful as well. I mean, well, great and awful at the same time. Right. But yeah, no, that completely shifted my life experience and brought me into a new form of spirituality that I never really believed in at all.
And Nick, he served a greater purpose.
It's hard for me to believe that, but I like to think so. He was a big person in my life, and for me, I guess yes, he did serve a bigger purpose for me, and I hope he did for other people as well, and I know he did. He's a great kid. I mean, great. Nothing wrong about him, Italian, big guy. Hey Sammy, what's going on? How you doing? Like that's just the way he was.
Great impression.
No, like honestly, that's the way that's the way he was, and I admired him very much. So it's
nothing like an origin story, right?
Yeah, man. God, you're gonna make me cry over here.
Yeah, I'm teary-eyed.
Oh man. No, but that's what really brought me into where I am now and how I started up my own business and doing all this stuff. And I actually started doing real estate and doing my own business. I did have this thing called Coastal before, which was like a clothing brand that I did when I was like 18. But my true drive of starting my own business really thrives off of him because we said together that we were going to make a business together. So for me to be able to actually do this and have him on my right shoulder, it makes me feel great every day. Sometimes, of course, you forget why you're doing it, and you have to remind yourself, why am I doing this? That's a lot, man.
Yes.
It's a lot to unpack. First episode.
I love it, man. Yeah.
First episode.
I'm excited. Can you ask some of those questions?
Yeah. This is a good one. Actually, this works for what we're talking about now. If you could go back in time, okay, and tell your younger self something, what would that one thing be?
I would just tell him you're doing fine. Like I wouldn't give him some like winning lottery ticket or some wise that. Some authority figure advice. I would just be like, dude, you're doing fine. Like, trust yourself.
My answer is the exact same. I wouldn't say or change or do anything. There's nothing to change in your life. You just have to accept the experiences and the things that happened. And if there are things that you've seen, that you could improve on, okay. But for you to go back and give yourself certain type of advice, it might be a little, I don't know. I didn't know how I felt about it. And I love the way that you answered it.
What would you say?
It's funny because I've actually did this mentally, visualize this. And it was almost like me while I'm older and, I have a suit on, I'm, and all I was doing was just putting my hand on the shoulder of my younger self. That's all it was. That's it. Not saying anything like, this quote, this, that, putting my hand on the shoulder. You're okay. I think that's all you need. Like that. Well, at least that's all I need.
Yeah. This guy, I forget his first name, but something Thompson. He's a life coach and someone I read a lot. But he says we don't need people to teach us. We need people to believe in us. The shitty thing about good advice is that when you need it, you can't use it.
And when you give it, you're probably not using it either sometimes. Right? Yeah. I know me, like I'm big into like those self-help books and like all that stuff. And you know, sometimes you're reading, you're like, oh man, this is great. Like I got to use this. Yeah. And then one day goes by, 2 days go by, a week goes by, and you're like, I never used that.
That's one of the biggest things I hear people. You sound like some of my clients. Like one of the biggest things people come to me and they're just like, yeah, TJ, I know what I need to do. I know, I'm just not doing it. Like information is not power.
Yeah.
You know, like if you could read all the books, you could, you know, go to therapy and discover all these things. But if you're not, you know, bringing that authentic side of yourself that you're discovering into reality, what's going on?
What's going on? All you have is you have the tools. Now you got to take the nail and the hammer and bang it in.
Right. And risk getting your thumb smashed.
And that's perfect. Because the thing is, if you just have the hammer and you just got the nails, but you're not hammering it in, guess what? You're not moving. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, but we know what we do? We hide the nails and the hammers behind our back.
So true. So true. You know, because even though we know the tools, we know what to do. We know. I have someone in my life that's a little bit afraid about old age. Okay, and like where
I always say the other option is worse.
What's that?
Not getting old, just dying.
Wow, that's powerful. So, wow, that's very powerful. So instead of saying I'm getting old, I'm living. You know, it's like. I think it backtracks to that whole thing about where was I going with that? I lost it.
I don't know. It's gone. Let it go.
It's gone. Let it go. Ebbs
Sam.
and flows. Ebbs and flows. By the way, have you ever done the Wim Hof breathing method?
Yes. I thought you were going to say something different.
No, but because you breathe, I was like, wait, let me actually bring this up because I love this.
Yeah, holotropic breathing, right?
I guess so. I didn't know that's the name of it. All I know of it is the Wim Hof method.
Right. I think originally, he may have gotten it from these like monks in, maybe it's Tibet or something. They would go up into the mountains with wet blankets and they would to keep themselves warm.
So for those of you that don't know the Wim Hof method, what that is basically it's about you're breathing in and breathing out for roughly about 30 intakes and 30 exhales, and then you just hold your breath for about, I think it's like 60 seconds, 75 seconds. Mm-hmm. And in that time, you feel like pure bliss, like nothing else is going on, you know, in your head. Hopefully nothing else is going on in your head. But for me, that's what I've seen, and I've just seen a full clarity on life. I did it today, this morning, before I did my meditation, and just honestly, the breathing was even better than the meditation. Sometimes it is,
right?
You know.
Yeah.
But to go back to that, so the monks, they're up on a hill. It's snowing. I'm assuming, so it's cold, and then they were breathing, like basically hyperventilating
with wet blankets.
So they purposely went out there with wet blankets. Mm-hmm. Now. So you think that method came from there? Like
that's what I heard. I mean, Of course, you know, who knows? But this is what I've heard: is that originally holotropic breathing it came from monks. I don't know which country.
Yeah.
That would go up in the mountain and train themselves to regulate their own bodies, regulate their own body temperatures by putting themselves in extreme cold conditions, and then doing the holotropic breathing.
So whenever somebody brings up the term monks or Shaolin or any of that stuff gets me so amped. I did Kung Fu for 13 years.
Nice.
And it was a great experience doing like forms and all that type of stuff, self-defense. But mainly the forms is what I loved.
Question, because I've also done, you know, Taekwondo, boxing, and some stuff like that. What was the biggest lesson? Or not even the biggest lesson. What was the biggest way it affected your personality?
Well, I'll give you two. One goes back. So when I was younger, I had a speech impediment. I also had basically like a mental disability where retention rate was really hard for me. So you would say something and I would have to repeat it in my head twice before I was able to understand what you're saying, which is why sometimes I have you repeat things because it's still there. It's not fully gone.
We all do that.
But hopefully people, when I'm talking to them, they don't realize that I'm just repeating what they're saying in my head, which I'm doing the whole fucking time.
Okay, overthinker, got it.
So, I'll give you a moment from my dad's point of view, and then I'll give you a moment from my point of view. Okay, so when I was younger, I would probably say this was when I was like 8 to 10 years old. What we used to do every single day was we would sweep the floors. I'm 8 years old, sweeping the whole dojo. So this is going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know, we're always complaining while we're doing it. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? So I kept every day back and forth. And this was a school program. So they would pick us up from school. We would go right to the Shaolin studio, and we would do this, right? Also learning Chinese and all that type of stuff. So anyways, I had a like a tournament to show all my forms. And when you're done with your form, you're supposed to sit down, you put your knees on the ground, and then you basically sit on your heels. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So when my dad first watched my tournament, my head, actually when I was born, my head was almost too big. It was too big for my body. I'll show you pictures. We'll input a picture right here of how big my
I'd love to see that.
My head was. It is actually. Maybe we won't put a picture.
Everyone's laughing right now. They're seeing. Everyone's laughing. Right.
So because my head was so big, my body was small. My head would go like this while I was while I was sitting. Right. As time went on, I kept doing it. My dad started to realize, like, holy shit, his head is staying right there, perfect. How is he sitting like that perfectly? When all the rest of the time I'm doing this. Move, and the reason was because I was so dialed in and focused on the forms and what other people were doing and like watching what they were doing rather than just like this and willy-nilly.
Right.
But that was one way from my dad's eyes to say, this is working, and I know this is working. And my dad was the one that pushed me to do this. He calls it the way, as in the way of life. Right. And now that I'm not doing it, he says, Sam, where's the way? Where's the way? You know, so
Love it. Love it. He's afraid you're gonna start doing this again.
I'm gonna start moving my head back. I think my body's a little bit bigger back from when I was 8 or 10, but who knows, right?
Who knows? I mean, maybe it wasn't just physiological.
Yeah. Exactly. Maybe I don't know. That was from his point of view. From my point of view, I started to realize that my speech impediment, which was a lot of stuttering, totally went by the wayside, completely. And I think that was the changing point. Was the thing with forms and doing martial arts is you're so dialed in while you're doing it because you have your physical self, you have your mind, and you also have your spiritual self, which is funny how it's three things. So having all that dialed in at once, you're so focused. Like you're so focused on what you're doing. Okay, I got this punch out here. I know that the next one is I got to do this and then switch switch my legs. And you have to have your whole body in shape, which you know.
Yeah, I would even, just to add on to that, I would even say that internal dialogue is not even going on because I think in those moments
you're so present. You're so
present that you become a verb.
Yes. Yeah, you are literally, it got to the point where I've done this significant form, which was the tiger form. I did it so many times. I did it with Adam. Adam, if you're listening, thank you so much. You've changed my life immensely, and I want you on here. But that form, I did it so many times that at a point I would do it, finish it. I had no idea I even did the whole form. It's like even the moments where I would perform, which I performed at a pretty high level, I got to the point where like I would go up, do it, and then at the end, everyone would clap and be like, wait, I didn't even start yet.
Let me ask you, when do you experience that now in this adult life?
Full presence like Kung Fu gave me.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, this is going to sound so corny, but like going and taking a walk with my girlfriend, just like walking and just being there, I feel so present. And the sad part is I don't do it that much. But doing that, like, I think it's the act of like leaving your house and going and walking that is just like, ugh, but like doing it, you know? But then after you're done doing it, you're like, all right, wait, that was totally worth it. And she's so into like, the fitness and all that stuff. So like she loves doing it. And like, I need to just push myself a little more, if that's the answer I just gave, which is funny.
I'll leave that up to you. I'm just a pointer.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely want to bring that back to my life. Martial arts. It really was a turning point in my life, and if I could somehow bring that up, that would be amazing. But so tell me a little bit about your experience with the like karate and did you say Tai Chi or was it Taekwondo? Taekwondo, boxing.
Yeah.
So what brought you there? And before we get into that, the reason why I got into Kung Fu is because I was told from my dad that it is the top of the chain, then everything else came from after it. So traditional Kung Fu, Shaolin Kung Fu was the start, and then everything else came off of it.
Right.
So for you, what brought you to those?
My dad just loved Bruce Lee, and I just loved moving my body.
Isn't that so funny? Your dad too? Is that really it? Oh.
That was really it. And when I got into it, it was me and my brother Justin, and we both got into it and just really loved it. Like, it was just, for me, it was like fun. I think only later it became, the mental aspect started to reveal itself to me later on. But for me, I got into it at a very young age. So it was.
How young were you?
I think I was like 6 or 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you do first? Was it karate? Was it taekwondo?
Taekwondo.
Taekwondo.
Yeah, boxing I just got into when I was like late teens.
So taekwondo, what is that? What is taekwondo? Like, if I were to compare it to Kung Fu, what is taekwondo? Like, I'm not fully, like, I know it, but I'm not fully familiar with it. Do you even remember, or was it so long ago?
I don't know if I can give a solid answer of the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it is what it is, right? I guess you guys on the podcast are gonna have to Google that.
Yeah.
Because TJ's not telling you.
I'm not telling you. Go search.
TJ,
to do the work yourself.
Tell me, how can we find you? How can our viewers find you?
Instagram, just @_ TJ Meagher. So I can find me. That's where I put most of my stuff. Go follow me there.
One more time.
It's Instagram.
Yep.
Right. So it's _ TJ Meagher.
Awesome. TJ, I had an amazing time, and when they just waved their hands like this and said we only have 5 minutes left, I don't know, I felt like the time flew. I don't know about you.
Me too. This was just like, we just went through a whole bunch of different things, dove into your past, my past, taekwondo, all kinds of different, and I loved it. It was awesome.
Dude, this was great. Thank you so much again, man.
For sure. I loved this. It was a good experience.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. TJ, just one question for you for our next guest. What is one question you want me to ask them?
Oh, this is just coming up from my intuition. I would have them say the question that they don't want you to ask.
So ask them, what question do you not want me to ask you?
Yes. And then have them answer that question.
This guy's definitely a philosophical guy. All right, guys. Thank you so much. TJ, you're awesome.
I love this. This is a great experience, man. Definitely excited to hear it.
Oh yeah. And guys, you can find me on Instagram as well. I am Sam_Campolo. That's SAM_CAMPOLO. And I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.